In today's video, what is a realistic body fat that you can carry around every day as a man? Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Revelia from ProPhysique.com, and I got a great question about what is a realistic body fat percentage that you can carry around as a man. Now, I'm gonna assume we're talking about low body fat percentage, right? Because I think for most of us, that's the correlation. But I also wanna talk about what happens when our body fat gets too high, what happens when it gets too low. I'm gonna talk about some studies that break down things like our waist circumference and what our body fat percentage should be if we're trying to like optimize things. And I'm also gonna give you my thoughts on what I think is possible and how we can get to that place. And today's video has a lot of meaning for me because I have asked myself this question many times, and I think I'm gonna talk about a case study, a natural bodybuilding case study. I'm a natural bodybuilder for those who don't know. So when we're talking about getting body fat lower, the biggest impact that it's gonna have is something called androgen deficiency or low testosterone. Now, if you have androgen deficiency, you're gonna have lower energy, a slower metabolism, likelihood to lose muscle, overall just not feeling great, right? Low energy, you can have brain fog. So can that happen just from being low body fat? We're gonna talk about a case study that I was actually involved in 2013, a natural bodybuilder by the name of Chris Foz. He was coached by Layne Norton, who was my first coach. So I've got a lot of experience in this place, and I wanna talk about my experiences in low body fat and what I really believe is the best place for us to be in regards to looking good, feeling good, and just being a high functioning person in a daily routine. And I think there's two questions here. What's the lowest possible body fat that we can maintain and feel good, right? And what's optimal? Now the word optimal implies that there is a perfect number. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I'm gonna give you guys my opinion. Instagram direct message, YouTube comments, I really try to engage with you guys in those two places. Now the reason I love this question is because it's a question I've asked myself so many times, and the gentleman asking this question also happens to be 60 years old. And it just so happens that I've been working on a video with George, my editor, and a guy by the name of John Hansen, where we're gonna discuss low body fat at 60 years old. And John is in a video that we did recently, Building Muscle After 60. So I'll put John on the screen here so we can talk about him and use him as an example for this video. But there is some actual data and research, so I want to talk about that real quick. So the first thing I want to address is the idea that too much body fat can be problematic for testosterone. And the reason, there's a set of dynamic steps, and fat cells can actually cause testosterone to be converted to estrogen, estrogen being the female dominant hormone. Not necessarily a bad thing, but when the ratios are off, it's a bad thing. And so too much body fat can be an indicator that you don't have the ideal amount of testosterone that you should have. So what's the best way to determine if you have too much body fat? And I think this number is gonna shock a lot of people. It's something that, I found this study right here on the screen that talks about waist circumference and AD or androgen deficiency. And it basically says that 20 centimeters or about 8 inches more than average is where we start to see a problem with testosterone. Now, if you think about that from the perspective of body fat on men, where does that appear? The love handles, the lower abdomen, we call it the spare tire effect, right? So if you have 8 inches or 20 centimeters more on average body fat in that area, it's gonna indicate that you're gonna have some problems with testosterone. The simple number that I like to use is take your height, cut it in half, and your waist should be below that. If your waist is at or below your height, cut in half, then you're very good there. So my waist sits at around 33, 34 inches, but I also happen to be 6'3", right? So it's no problem for me. I'm well under, but I'll say that wasn't always the case. And so I think paying attention to body fat percentage can be a challenge because who actually knows what our body fat percentage is? The tests are not that reliable. Whether you're getting DEXA, whether you're doing Skinfold, you're gonna get different numbers, whether you're doing the electric impedance, something that the handheld stuff that runs the electricity through you, the in-body scan. But just knowing that your waist size is gonna really dictate how lean you should be and how much body fat you should lose. Get that waist to come in and you're gonna see that testosterone level rise naturally. Now, another way to look at this is our body fat percentage as it gets lower can be problematic. So I actually found a study right here that discusses just how low body fat can be without impacting hormones negatively. So this study right here basically says that the lower limit for body fat on men that are considered healthy is 4 to 6% body fat. And I'm sure you, just like me, immediately perked up and thought, what? 4 to 6% body fat is healthy? Now, this is the lower limit, right? And the study basically discusses that you can be that lean. The study was done in a population of people that were in the army. And they were going through basic training and they were losing a lot of body fat. And so they looked at, the body fat percentage of these men and their performance. That doesn't mean at 4 to 6% body fat, you're going to feel great. It's going to mean that if you look at blood work and if you meet these people, they would be described as healthy. But as someone who has dieted down to this level before, the leanest I ever got, 2012, and I'll tell you this, it does start to impact your overall well-being when you get that lean. Now, I'll say something about that as well in regards to dieting down and getting to 4 or 6% body fat and staying there are two different animals. I think a lot of us think about the struggle in losing body fat, and this is something that I did for many years. The struggle to get body fat off is much higher than it is to keep it off. But very few of us actually lose the body fat and keep it off. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to handle that, because the person asking this question didn't ask me how to get it off. They asked me what's a good body fat percentage to shoot for. So I'm going to give you that number because I've tried to stay leaner and I've kind of found that spot. Now, if you see me here right now, I've been walking around at about 10% body fat for an entire year. Sure, I fluctuated a little bit, but this is the easiest I've ever stayed lean. And I think a lot of it has to do with my methods, my education, my experience, and also the fact that I've made a lot of mistakes over the years and I've figured out what works and what doesn't work. So when it comes to body fat percentage, the lowest, 4 to 6% seems pretty lean. So what is the actual number that you should shoot for? Okay. The first thing I want to say is it really comes down to your lifestyle, right? I think for anyone that is not interested in drinking alcohol, not interested in staying out late, doesn't have a lot of stress in their life, can put a lot of focus on either their training, their body composition, or in some way, shape, or form, they make their living off of that, or they just really enjoy that. It's a lot easier to stay leaner, right? Because if you're consistent with your diet, if you're consistent with your sleep, your training, your cardio, your activity levels, staying low body fat is no problem. So what's the leanest I think you could stay and feel good? I'd say 8 to 10% body fat, okay? I know even at 60, 61 years old, I think that that's possible. Now, there are some advancements now in hormone replacement therapy. So there may be some benefit to looking into hormone replacement therapy if you are low body fat and you want to stay low body fat. Because if you're having AD, then what we can look at is actually increasing your androgens through exogenous hormones like testosterone injections. And I think this is where there's a lot of confusion, okay? I think there's a big difference between someone taking hormone replacement therapy to keep their testosterone and their hormone levels normal versus somebody that's taking hormone replacement therapy or calling it hormone replacement therapy, but doing it for bodybuilding purposes. They're doing it specifically because they want to be more muscular. That to me is steroid use, okay? So the two issues are separate. And obviously you can do whichever one you prefer. But if you're going to be a natural athlete, which I still am, and I'm not opposed to HRT, but what I find is that the place that I can stay the leanest and still feel great is about here. It's about 10, 9, 11% body fat. And the reason being is, even if I were to get leaner, stay 7 or 6 body fat and stay there for a while, what I really feel starts to happen is I start to deal with more risk of injury. My joints and ligaments will hurt more. I start to notice a decrease in strength. And I think there is a negative result from having too low body fat in your joints, your muscles, and just overall, sometimes your energy might be lower. But I don't think it's necessarily because of the nutrition. Now, when it comes to nutrition, what are the two most important factors in keeping body fat low and feeling good? 20 to 25% of your calories need to come from fat. Why? Nutritional fat starts the cascade of hormones. So if you are doing a very restrictive type of diet where you're not paying attention to your fats and your fats get really low, for men, it's probably 40 to 50 grams of fat a day. That's when we're going to have some issues. The other one would be making sure that your protein is around a gram per pound of your goal weight or of your low body weight. And if you're at 4% body fat, that's probably, you just need to be getting as many proteins as a gram per pound that you weigh per day. So understanding how to set up your nutrition is going to be key in getting to and maintaining a low body fat. So as someone who coaches athletes, and if you were my athlete and you were 60 or 61 years old and you were to say to me, hey coach, how lean do you think we can get? What I really look for when I'm checking with my athletes are wellness scores. So everyone that checks in with me has to fill out a survey each week, and I ask them, how was your sleep? How was your stress? How was your adherence? How was your training? How was your recovery? How was your hunger? These wellness scores indicate to me whether a person is thriving, surviving, just getting by. And sometimes those wellness scores might be terrible, but we're trying to win a bodybuilding competition and we have the mindset to suffer. But if someone is just trying to maintain a low body fat and their hunger is extremely high, they're having trouble adhering to their diet, they're having trouble sleeping, right? We're having trouble with training in the gym, and maybe they're having trouble with either like sexual performance or, mood swings or brain fog, then we're really going to start to say, okay, maybe we're a little bit too lean to be successful. So what would I suggest? I'd say right around 10 to 12% would be the low end of what is possible, even at 61 years old. And the reason I say that is because at 49 years old, I stay leaner than I've ever stayed. And I think a lot of that just comes down to lifestyle factors. Okay. I'm not out as much with my friends. My routine is very, very normal. Okay. I work, I go to the gym, I eat the same stuff a lot of the time. And I just don't come out of that pattern, and I'm not missing workouts. I'm not missing meals. Whereas when I was younger in my 20s, there was a lot of that. I'd crush it in the gym, but my diet might suck on the weekends because I was out drinking till 4 a.m. a couple nights. So understanding that if your lifestyle's in check, you can stay a little bit leaner. Now, I've seen some guys that are professional fitness models stay well below 10% body fat, and they don't tend to suffer, but it's because they just get into their routine and they really stick to it. They set their boundaries. They know they have to get their sleep. They know they have to hit their macros and their calories and their cardio just right. So they set up this routine. So these studies kind of give us a guideline. Now, I will point to one more study in 2013. Chris Foz, who was a friend of mine at the time, we were coached by the same coach, Layne Norton, did a case study over the course of 6 months where he'd lost body fat down to, I think it was down to 4.5% body fat. He was a natural pro bodybuilder, extremely muscular bodybuilder. I think he was around 190 pounds on stage at 4.5% body fat. And actually in this case study, they showed he did not lose any lean body mass. So that's a great diet. That's very good. However, his testosterone dropped from 9.2 nanograms a deciliter down to around 4. So you see the testosterone drop from 16% to 4% body fat. Now, knowing the style of diet that he used, which is something that I did early on in my career when Layne was coaching me, was a lot of HIIT cardio and a lot of low fat, low carbohydrate days. So extreme energy deficiency. And there's actually research that shows that that's the problem. It's not the low body fat. It's actually the approach that you're using. Since I now, myself, do not take this approach, I don't do any high intensity cardio. I only do low intensity steady state. I also make sure I keep my fats, my carbs in a range that keep me feeling good and strong throughout prep. My preps might stretch out a little bit longer, but I feel better throughout. But even this study with Chris Foz, what they looked at from the date of his show to 6 months later, his testosterone levels had returned to normal. So there is a normal ebb and flow when you're losing body fat and you're in an energy deficit of having some androgen deficiencies, but they return right back to normal. Okay, so if you're looking at like what's happening with your body at times, that's it. Now, what I think would have been interesting with Chris Foz, if I could have been a part of that, would be to bring the calories up, bring the cardio down, remove the HIIT cardio, focus on keeping the body fat low, around 5%, but walking the food up. Now, this is something that I commonly do with my competitors who are in prep and they want to do multiple shows because we can't put the body fat back on and take it off. And what I find when I do that is that actually they find it very easy to stay lean and they start to feel better. And my female competitors will feel great and they'll actually get their cycle back, right? So I think there's more to learn on this front, okay? How you get to low body fat might just determine how easy it is for you to stay low body fat. More to come, but that's what I do as a coach. I'm trying to learn, trying to be the best version of myself, trying to provide the best solution for those of my clients that want to get on a bodybuilding stage, want to get shredded, whatever it is. And if you guys want to set up a free consultation, I'll put a link below at prophysique.com. But really, I'd say the lowest 8 to 12% body fat seems to be correct, although the research says between 4 and 6. But from my personal experience, that's just a bit too low to be reasonably effective as a human being on any given day. All right, guys, I'll talk to you tomorrow.